whatever emotion comes up, it will stem from four main emotions. We only have four main emotions or feelings. We've got fear, we have sadness, we have anger, and we have joy. And these emotions generally, especially when we feel something like fear, these are emotions that we tend to want to escape, or sadness, because they're low vibration emotions. It does feel uncomfortable. And we've actually conditioned ourselves that anytime we feel these emotions, that we need to escape them.
Are you ready to bring your dream body and health into life, but just can't seem to keep the motivation going? And is it finally time to address the self sabotage and the unwanted eating behaviors, such as binge eating, emotional eating, and nighttime eating, that you know are getting in the way of your goals? Do you ever wonder what it would take for you to feel in control of your rituals so that you can stay consistent and see results? Welcome to this week's special Make Peace with Food Minisode on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast, where you'll learn how to overcome unwanted eating behavior and other self-sabotaging habits by shifting your nervous system so that your body works with you instead of against you. I'm your host, Shaban, and with each episode, I am honored to be your coach and guide in the journey to make peace with food and find food and body freedom so that struggle with weight is a thing of the past. When you tune in every Thursday on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast, you'll catch the latest conversation on unwanted eating behaviors and learn how to shift the nervous system, rewire the brain to new patterns, and end the food and body obsession so you finally feel relaxed and no longer confused around food. Now, before we begin, I want to quickly invite you to grab a free copy of my Food Freedom ebook that I have for you at makepeacewithfood.com. And if you find that this conversation resonates with you today, then I also want to invite you to join our free Make Peace with Food Facebook community at myfoodfreedomlifestyle.com, where you can connect with me and my team directly. The links are in the show notes. And of course, if you know somebody who you feel could benefit from these conversations and discussions, make sure to share this podcast with them too. All right, athletes, now let's get into it.
It's all about the nervous system. And the part of the nervous system that I work with is the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system, that's the part of the nervous system that controls all of the involuntary things like heart rate and heartbeat and blood pressure and temperature and even hormones, even thoughts and emotions. And depending on which nervous system state you're in, it will drive the hormones, it'll drive the blood pressure, but it'll also drive the thoughts and the emotions. And so the the two parts of the autonomic nervous system are sympathetic nervous state, which we've all heard of as maybe fight or flight or freeze. I call it protection mode. And then we also have parasympathetic, which is that rest and digest. That's the natural state that we're supposed to be in most of the time. That's where the body can start to regulate itself, regulate metabolism, regulate hormones, recover and regenerate any tissue and heal itself. And that I call safety mode. But the way that we actually trigger ourselves into protection mode, first of all, is only supposed to be temporary. It's only supposed to be for a short amount of time. Our body does its job. We either get out of a stressful situation, we're able to solve our problems, and then we're supposed to be able to regulate and come back to safety mode. But the way that, first of all, society is set up right now, where it's go, 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 do more. Why aren't you working 7 days a week and don't sleep and don't this, and sleep is for weak people. And the way that we've actually started to believe all this. And then even when we notice how our kids, for example, are also living this lifestyle. I've got two teenage girls myself, and they start school very early in the morning. At the end of the day, they go to sports, and then they come back and do homework. And then on the weekends, they've got other sports and activities, and it is nonstop. And we're also conditioning them to the go, go, go. So that's one way that we kick in protection mode. But other ways also could be from trauma. And trauma could be, of course, sexual, or it could be physical, or it could be emotional. It could be living with someone who's narcissistic. You're in that type of toxic environment all the time, constantly triggering protection mode, constantly in that need to survive, to protect, to do something to save yourself. And then, of course, another form of trauma that we don't oftentimes talk about is food scarcity. Food scarcity is actually a form of trauma. Food scarcity could be real. So as in, I grew up, mom could barely put food on the table. I went to bed hungry often. Or it could also be imposed food scarcity, which I call diet. Dieting is an imposed food scarcity. When we restrict ourselves, we again turn on that nervous system response. That's why, Laura, we're so afraid of food, and we're so afraid of gaining weight, and we're so afraid of getting big, and we're so afraid of how we look, and we shame ourselves and we hate ourselves through that process. That is another way that we actually kick in that nervous system state. And when we're in that nervous system state, a couple things happen in the body. First thing, metabolism has to slow down. Why? Because the body's job is right now to conserve energy. When we're in that need for survival, she or he who has the most stored body fat is going to survive the longest. And the other thing that happens is we turn that reptilian part of the brain on. There's this inclination for binging that we all actually have, that we're able to turn on when we are in prolonged state of protection mode. And that's where now we see the cravings. We see the sugar cravings. We see that need to maybe turn towards food when we have certain emotions such as loneliness or boredom or stress, or maybe even when we're sad, or even when we're angry, or even when we have joy, we turn to food to cope with those emotions. And so we can also nighttime snack. We can start to see that we have, again, this need to feel a little bit out of congruency with what we're wanting to eat and then what we end up eating. And so instead of really focusing on stop eating this and don't eat that, and this has high omega-3 and all these things, and again, repolarizing food, what we actually do is talk about how can we regulate the nervous system? How can I start to work on thoughts and emotions? Because when we're in protection mode, all of our thoughts are always on worst case scenarios. They're projected into the future, things that bring us uncertainty, anxiety, fear, doubt, all of this, helplessness. And then we're also projected on events that have happened in the past, which bring up those feelings of regret or remorse, or of something that is lost maybe. So a lot of sadness and maybe even depression. And when we regulate the nervous system so that we know how every single time we trigger this, we can control thoughts, control emotions to bring it back into safety mode, the cravings are gone. All of a sudden, the self-sabotaging behavior is gone. And today I'm talking about food. And I just want to say that food is one vehicle, but alcohol could be another vehicle, and cannabis can be another vehicle. Over shopping could be another vehicle. And so can actually watching porn, or having, let's say, extramarital sexual events, things like that. All of these are coping mechanisms that really stem from a dysregulated nervous system. And so the goal then is to really work on the internal environment. And because one thing I always share and teach is our outer environment, our physical body, is a direct reflection of what's going on inside. And so by understanding how to stay more centered in emotions, more centered around choices, then all of a sudden things start to be more in our control than out.
Wow. That was amazing, and a lot, and such a great explanation, and gives an understanding to either our own behaviors or our teenagers' behaviors. So we wonder why sometimes they do things, right? In fact, we wonder that a lot. And we're like, why the heck did they do this? And there's a good chance that it's because they're dysregulated, right? They're out, they're not in that. So when I talk about, you and I are talking about the same thing, but the autonomic nervous system being the on or off kind of, I almost say it's like the gas pedal or the brake of the car, right? And it's like when you're very dysregulated, it's kind of like if you were to drive your car and be like gas, brake, brake. It's like a total waste of energy, and it's really damaging to your car, because your car is designed to go nice and easy, gas or brake, right? Not this kind of switching back and forth. And so when you're very dysregulated and your body doesn't know what to do, it kind of gets out of control. And an illustration I like to use is from the polyvagal theory, which is, it sounds fancy, but it's very, very easy. It's just like green is calm and relaxed. That's that parasympathetic nervous system where maybe we're going to relax and go to sleep. But it's also the time that we socially connect. It's when we feel empathy. It's when we feel kind of love and belonging, like those positive feelings. And that is when we are the most regulated. And then you go up into the yellow zone, which is kind of like warning, just like a stoplight. And that's when we're like a little bit anxious, or we're a little bit stressed, and we're kind of starting to get into that fight or flight feelings. And then the very top of, this chart is red, where that's where we start to shut down. And that's when we start to feel really sad or very depressed. And that's when, because the yellow is so overwhelming, that our body has to go somewhere. And so it can either go down to green or up to red and kind of shut down. And so what I'm picturing here when you describe this dysregulated state and the sympathetic nervous system being like really amped up is, sorry, my dog is moving the camera. is the yellow is just kind of like, but on overdrive, right? That anxious, overwhelmed state, and we don't know how to get ourselves back down into the green. And even if we were able to, then we would better able to make the choices that are in alignment, right? I think this is what I'm hearing you say, with what our vision is, right? We have these goals and we have a vision of like, this is what we should eat. And then there's the what we actually eat. And those two lists are not always matching. In fact, they probably aren't most of the time. And on top of that, not only as moms are we that way, but our teenagers, like bringing it back to the teenagers, are even more dysregulated because A, they don't have that prefrontal cortex fully developed to help them regulate, but B, their lives are very stressful and they don't have the coping skills set in place. They haven't learned a lot of these skills to be able to. And so what do you do with that? Like, right? Like we can explain this to our clients. We can teach it to our clients. And I know things I do with my clients to help bring them back down into a balanced state. But what are some things that you do?
So good. So good. And these are things we can do with clients. And these are also things we can do with our kids. And even as teenagers, they're beginning to sit in their body. They're beginning to connect with their body. They're beginning to really sit into who they are. And so one thing that we can always do is bring it back to the body, because the body keeps the score. And you may have already heard this, and it's a very, very powerful statement. But all emotions and all these things that I shared with you, traumas, or even just stimulating that sympathetic nervous state, all of that is energy. And it all is sitting somewhere in the body. And so one thing that we can all do, and maybe if you're listening in, this could be a little technique that you can try on yourself. And so just sitting really still with yourself and taking a few deep breaths, and then scanning the body maybe for areas of tension, and finding areas of tension, starting really from the top of the head, bringing it all the way down to the face and to the shoulders, and just without even questioning too much, just really sitting more in the body, less in the mind, finding an area that has tension. And when you find that area that has tension, you can just even ask that area, what emotion are you holding on to? And the emotion that may come up might be fear. The emotion that may come up might be worry. It might be something that you're not even aware of. And even just, again, without the mind thinking so much, I want this to really be the first thing that comes to your mind, because the first thing that comes to your mind is what the body is saying. The more we try to interfere and rationalize, that's more our mind that's rationalizing. And whatever emotion comes up, it will stem from four main emotions. We only have four main emotions or feelings. We've got fear, we have sadness, we have anger, and we have joy. And these emotions generally, especially when we feel something like fear, these are emotions that we tend to want to escape, or sadness, because they're low vibration emotions. It does feel uncomfortable. And we've actually conditioned ourselves that anytime we feel these emotions that we need to escape them. And that's the thing, is they are a part of that sympathetic nervous system response. And they're there for a purpose. They actually serve a purpose. So for example, let's say you're scanning the body and you find jealousy. Okay, what is my emotion? Jealousy. Why? Because someone just got the job title that I wanted, and I didn't get it today. Well, jealousy still has a root or roots from one of these, or two or more of these four, depending on the person. Every single person is different. Jealousy for me might be anger and fear. Jealousy for someone else might be maybe sadness and fear. So what is it for you? Now that you've identified, okay, which of the four, root four, are there, now let's break that up. So if, for example, you're noticing that there's fear, well, fear is a very important emotion. Fear is that emotion that basically serves as our blind spots. Fear tells us what to be aware of. Fear tells us and shows us maybe what we don't notice. Fear gives us an opportunity to take action from it. And it's also there again so that we can find a way to protect ourselves. So if we're feeling fear, we shouldn't try to escape it. We should maybe try to understand, okay, fear, what you trying to tell me? What is it that I don't see? What is it I'm not aware of? And if, for example, I feel anger, well, anger is also another one of those emotions that sometimes we're embarrassed to express, and we shouldn't be angry, and anger is a bad thing. But anger is actually how we draw boundaries. It's how we take action. The only way that we can take action is through anger. So if I'm feeling angry, okay, what kind of boundaries do I need to place here? And anger is a higher vibration than fear. So think about it. If, let's say, I was in the woods and a bear came out and it was attacking my kids, I'd first be afraid. And then if I were to take action to protect my kids, I would need anger to take action. So it's actually a very useful emotion. Again, part of that protection mode. And then sadness is one of those emotions. Again, that's a heavy one. That sits at the lowest vibration. Actually, lowest is shame and guilt, but then above that is sadness. But it's a heavy feeling. You actually feel heaviness in the body because literally your body's vibrating a lot slower. You are actually heavier. And sadness is an important emotion. Sadness shows you that there's something coming to an end and something else is beginning. And that's the law of the universe. That something will end and something else will begin. So that's your opportunity to also reflect on, well, what's going on in my life that's making me sad right now? What is ending and what is start and what is beginning? And joy is another important one because a lot of us eat when we have joy, or a lot of us maybe tend to turn towards certain substances when we have joy. So what
Mm-hmm.
is it? Actually, we're trying to escape from that feeling of joy. And sometimes what could be behind that is that feeling of not enoughness or not deservingness because we have joy and maybe we're feeling a little bit even guilty that we have a particular sense of joy when maybe someone else is suffering around us. So by allowing yourself just to get curious and really feeling it through your body and starting to breathe into that, you're already going to notice that things are starting to shift. But what we tend to do instead, Laura, is we tend to feel this emotion. There's a trigger. I need a glass of wine. There's a trigger. I need to eat. I need a cookie. And so we don't even give ourselves that opportunity. And so we learn to just condition ourselves and download that pattern. Every time I feel fear, or every time I feel worry, or every time I feel this, I'm going to turn to that. And without actually trying to understand that these emotions are there, they're serving a purpose, and they are getting us to really take action in some way. Now, what we can do also, especially, and it's never, ever, ever too late, even if you never maybe held space for your kids growing up and had them express their emotions, or even for yourself, if you grew up in an environment where, let's say, emotions weren't validated, that every time you felt a particular emotion, have a cookie, or if something great happened, have a cookie, and you didn't have that connection with being able to express your emotion, it's never too late. And this is something that you can teach your kids. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have fear. It's okay to have joy. It's okay to have sadness. And these are not emotions that we need to numb. Boys can cry, and that's okay also. Whereas, again, we're learning that we're not allowed to do that. So giving yourself full permission to express that and express it does not revolve around trying to numb it, trying to escape it, trying to avoid it is so incredibly powerful. And this is a process that obviously takes practice. So I showed you today how to get into your body, and that's one tool that I use, but there's many other tools. But
Yeah.
it's a process, and it could be a hit and miss. So as you get started, don't get frustrated with yourself. Have a lot of grace because these have been patterns you've been probably playing out for years and years and years, if not decades. And so allow yourself to get into that. And you'll start to notice that there are certain emotions, once you break them up into those four that I shared, that will drive you to a certain behavior. So it might always be fear for you. And it could also stem from your childhood. So again, connecting with the body, trying to remember, okay, when was the first time I felt that? What was the circumstance? Well, I was an 8-year-old girl. So this belief system came from an 8-year-old girl. It was the 8-year-old part of me. And now we can start doing some inner child work also around that, just to really start to explore what meanings did I give that? What does that 8-year-old girl need to help her maybe change that memory or to give her exactly what is missing in that moment.
Wow. That was so powerful, just what you described, because you're right. I think we do feel uncomfortable with uncomfortable emotions, and we suppress them or we push them away. And we have a hard time just as humans tolerating these uncomfortable things. And even the joy one, I thought that was so great that you said that, because it's true. That's what people, do self-sabotage when they feel joyful, or, they have a fear of success. That's some things that I deal with certain clients. And so, yeah, just giving those pieces space and allow them to process and feel them and kind of accept them instead of resist them. So I want to turn the conversation into a different direction before we wind down. Everybody's talking about the injectables for weight loss, the semiglutides, and I don't know all the proper terms for them, but it's a big thing. It's going on. I know a lot of people that are doing it, and I know a lot of people that have lost a lot of weight. They look amazing. What are your thoughts about that?
So my thoughts are to do the research first and foremost, and to also start looking up people who are coming forward who are talking about the negative side effects that are not being spoken about. And the issue right now is that, of course, there are a lot of celebrities and big names right now standing behind these medications. But what I'll also say is do the research and find out the other side of the story. If it's too good to be true, most often it is too good to be true. These medications are generally given for people with diabetes, and now they're being prescribed to anybody who's wanting to release weight rapidly. And some of the side effects that I'm seeing with my clients, so things like gastric paralysis, there's, constipation, and it's taking Ozempic and semiglutides gives the body the same effect as taking laxatives for a long time. So if you know the effects of what happens when you take laxatives for a long time, you then lose the ability to have that natural smooth muscle contraction of the colon so that you can eliminate. And so taking Ozempic gives you the exact same effects. It also starts to tamper with the body's natural ability to regulate its insulin and its glucose metabolism. And what I always tend to see is that people are successful while they're on these medications. And of course, the idea is to continue to be on them. There's other side effects that include vomiting and diarrhea, and vomiting, violent vomiting, like not just feeling sick, but actually like, uncontrollable. And so a lot of side effects, and a lot of experts also are coming forward to talk about it. But basically, when you take Ozempic, you do release weight, yes. And the majority of that weight loss that you actually tend to experience is muscle mass. And so what we end up seeing is anyone who comes off this medication regains that weight back. And so you have to learn how to make certain shifts in your life first, in my opinion, and before you take any other medication that's going to assist you to do that. If you haven't done that yet, if you have not done that yet, what I would recommend is start there. There's so many ways that you can shift certain habits around your nutrition. And I'm anti-diet, and when I say this, it's really habits around maybe when you're eating, or bringing in certain habits before removing in other habits. But there's certain things that you can do around your nutrition and around your movement that could fit your lifestyle, that can be sustainable for you, and that can give you the result that you want. But it's our society now has, and just kind of what we're talking about with the nervous system, it has a focus on instant gratification and an instant reward. It's an instant reward. I want to do this, and I want to be finished in a month, and I want to see results yesterday. And we're no longer patient around how to actually continue to put in that work to see that long-term effect. But again, do the research, and don't take my word for it. There's so much stuff out there right now. So many people also advocating against this right now. And just be mindful. Again, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. And there's always that rule when it comes to releasing weight. The faster it's off, the faster it comes back. So if you've made lifestyle changes that over a few months, you're now starting to see the effect of, well, those are permanent. But if you make certain changes around your diet that have given you instant and fast results very, very quickly, then it's just as fast to come back to.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, that's great. The other part that, I'm not sure a lot of people are putting a lot of focus or energy into, what I think of is the brain health. So, exercise. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Daniel Amen. I'm certified through him, and he's a big, very well-known psychiatrist who does brain scans, and he talks about how exercise is the WD-40 of the brain, for the brain. So you're really keeping your brain healthy, and when you exercise, and when you don't exercise, your brain actually loses mass, and it loses lots of things, and it doesn't have what it needs to really be, a lot of us moms at some point have had brain fog. A lot of times it's like either after we've had the babies, or we're really stressed out and we're really tired, or at any point, we've all kind of had it at one point or another. And in order to eliminate brain fog, to have great brain function, to have healthy thoughts and feelings like we're talking about, in order to have that prefrontal cortex, everything working properly, we need the good diet, we need the good exercise, we need the good stress management, we need good sleep. Like all those modifiable lifestyle factors are not just about weight and looks and appearance, but it's actually about you being your best self. Being able to think clearly is like, I can't think of anything I wouldn't want to give up more, like my ability to think clearly.
So good. Yeah. So well said. 100%.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is, we misunderstand that word diet, right? Or even just that focus on wellness. And diet most often times for us is what we're eating, what we're consuming through our mouth. But diet is exactly all the things that you just said, Laura. My diet is the air I breathe. It's the people I hang out with. It's what I watch on TV. It's the books I read. It's the conversations I'm sitting in. And it's all of that that's changing my body's chemistry, that's triggering the nervous system. All of that is my diet. And once you start to look at things differently in that way, and especially when you start to live in a way where everything is about an energetic exchange. Everything is about, okay, how is this going to trigger my nervous system? And how is this going to really impact my body? Instead of, how is this going to help me lose weight? And is this going to help me gain weight? And so instead of that being the exchange of currency, what if it's now, well, what's that going to do to my hormones? What is that going to do to my nervous system? And sleep is one of those important things that is oftentimes overlooked, just like movement, and when I say movement, I'm not talking about high intensity interval training. I'm really talking about just walking, just getting outside and connecting with nature, which is something, again, that we do less and less of. Well, not just as we age, but even just seeing our kids now. All my kids have cell phones and they've got iPads and they're, and we didn't have that growing up. We played with boxes and we played in parks, and it was very different. So even just remembering how simple that can be, just even incorporating that movement into our lifestyle, even that is just part of our diet.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Is there anything that you feel like is extremely important that maybe we didn't cover, but that would just add to a mom's understanding of her nervous system or her teenager's nervous system as far as that regulation, that emotional regulation and the relationship with food?
Well, so many things that we can add, but I think I would like to leave it off with just breath work and breathing. And this is, again, just part of what we were talking about before, breath being a part of diet. How we breathe is very much, again, dependent on which nervous system state we're in. So imagine, somebody jumps in the room and you're like, and you get startled, and all of a sudden you're breathing through your chest, and everything in the day is stressful, and you're just, come on, kids, and everything is always up here in your chest. You're in protection mode. And a really, really quick way to regulate nervous system is just by changing breath. And one thing that we can do, all of us sitting here, putting one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, taking deep breaths where as we inhale, we expand first through the belly button, and then lastly through the top of the chest. And as we exhale, releasing the top of the chest and then the belly button last, and just really doing those deep belly breathing and taking a moment in our days. And again, as busy moms are trying to work and keep the house clean and make sure dinner's there and the kids are well served, and oh my God, they're teenagers and their teenage problems. Like, I could tell you, I can relate with those. It's so important to make that time, and it takes a couple of minutes. And we don't do it. We always think that we don't have time. We don't do it. And we make time for everyone else. We make time for our kids. That's non-negotiable. But taking time for ourselves. And I'll tell you now, as the mom, you are the center of the universe of the household. And if you are regulated, and if you are calm, and if you are taking care of you and filling your own cup first and putting that oxygen mask on first, like they always say, you're going to impact your kids in the most positive way. Sometimes we think we have to do things for them so that they're good, but it's actually the opposite. We have to do things for us so that they're good. And when we can do that, when we prioritize ourselves, when we really take those moments for ourselves where it's not, my moment for myself is to go eat ice cream. My moment for myself is to go breathe. My moment for myself is to go to connect with nature, go do art, go do that thing that I always want to do. That's a great way also to really regulate the nervous system. And so if you're listening to this and you're resonating with this, take that time, put it in your schedule, make that you time, and then see how that's going to start to impact everyone else around you. Thank you for listening to this week's Make Peace with Food Minisode on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast. If this has resonated with you today, I want to invite you to subscribe to the show so you never miss a beat. And if you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, then please share this episode with them. Let's work together to help as many people as possible make peace with food and fall in love with fitness. And by the way, I need to mention that if you rate and review this podcast on iTunes and send over the screenshot to Sherry at sherryshaban.com, you'll receive a $500 voucher to join me at one of my upcoming retreats, or to use it in our Make Peace with Food coaching program. And don't forget to visit myfoodfreedomlifestyle.com to join the free Facebook group for more resources.
And remember, athlete, you are an inspiration. I cannot wait to hear your story.